Before we start, since I'm really busy with work at the moment and the chapter is already neatly separated into two halves, I'll make this chapter review a two-parter by covering Morena's and BORK's portion now and Benjamin's in part 2, since I have a lot to say on both. Cool? Cool. Let's get into it. Chapter 410 surprisingly starts where the previous one left off, with Borkson choosing the yes card. I say surprisingly since I had expected for Togashi to leave us clenching our butts in anticipation until the next batch of chapters. But the man was nice enough to resolve this particular plot thread before switching focus to other characters. It's revealed that BORK did indeed cheat, in almost exactly the way I described last review, by marking the return card with her finger and sliding it down to feel for the indentation. In so doing, she triggered Morena's conditional pseudo-coercive manipulation countermeasure, and can now only respond in either affirmation or negation. I say it's pseudo-coercive since the effect manifests in such a way where BORK's mind is left intact and trapped inside her own body, while it acts on autopilot. I do not like this twist. Allow me to explain. When the game first started, Morena told BORK that withdrawing from it or refusing to play would see her lose all freedom save for the ability to answer in the negative or affirmative. In retrospect, we can assume this to mean that BORK would have been forced to play in such a way as to either try to answer with a yes or a no, instead of going for the X like she did until the very end. My issue is that another trigger for the aforementioned manipulation effect, cheating, was never disclosed by Morena. You may argue that a no cheating rule is embedded in the very premise of a game, and as such doesn't require to be stated outright. And in another context, I would have viewed that as a valid argument, but not here. This caveat of Morena's ability should have absolutely been explained when BORK chose the power card. The negotiation game is explicitly confirmed in this chapter to be Morena's own ability, and as one of the 3 conditions needed for Contagion to fully go online, it also makes it an essential part of it. When describing the power card to BORK, Morena outright said she'll tell her the truth without hiding anything, meaning that a lie of omission would count as a lie. However, in not informing BORK about the consequences of cheating at any point during the game, but especially when BORK picked the power card, Morena, in my view, absolutely told a lie of omission, in not describing the full scope and range of her ability. Morena's rationale that cheating amounts to retiring from a fair match is nonsensical. This was never a fair match in the first place. BORK was a non-NEN user forced to play a game for her very life, while under duress surrounded by Morena's henchmen in their little safe space. Calling any of that fair is a disservice to the meaning of the word. In the official translation, Morena says serious instead of fair, but my point still stands. This was a game for her life. Of course BORK was going to cheat. By attempting to cheat in a life or death game, where an explicit ban against cheating wasn't stipulated, BORK was indeed treating the game as seriously as possible. Imagine the balls of titanium needed to try and cheat in a game where you're surrounded by the enemy possessing supernatural powers, and even thinking of a way to dispose of the evidence in as natural a way as possible. BORK was robbed. Another big issue for me is how the information that Morena discloses with each card was allocated. You'd think that the yes card would reveal to BORK what exactly her function is to be, what the organ and donor are, and what kind of ability she is to awaken. Instead, it just goes on to explain Contagion in even greater detail, which the power card should have already covered. As a more general critique, despite Morena's talk of limitations and pledges, the rules of this game seem to barely apply to her. Another thing I noticed last chapter is her inconsistency in describing the question B card. Initially, in chapter 407, she described QB as paired with QA, wherein QB would have Morena further expound on the last question posed during the QA round. But in chapter 409, she directly goes against that statement by saying that if BORK only has one question she wants to ask, they can just skip the QA round and move on to QB instead. Is she outright changing the rules of the game as it goes on, or is she just not bothering to explain them fully? In my view, either should be a violation of her pledge to remain truthful. Considering the game took up 3.5 chapters, I must say I'm pretty peeved at this conclusion. I was really invested in this plotline and was really glad that Togashi seems to be enjoying his little detours by focusing so much on the game when his work time is rather limited due to his health issues. But this is the first time a conclusion has left me disappointed. Considering all the avenues it could have taken, having the game end due to a rule that was never brought up when it really should have been feels anticlimactic. In my view, at least, I'm genuinely interested in hearing your thoughts on this specifically. Are you bothered at all by how the game went down, or do you even like it? And if so, why? I am not judging, I am genuinely asking. Anyhow, back to the chapter. Morena goes on to reveal the full name and scope of her ability. Contagion, Etude of Love. It works like a game app which is installed directly onto a phone, i.e. a person, once the three conditions are met, with Morena serving as the admin. It would seem that Morena kissing someone makes them a level 0 provisional member, with them needing to fulfill all the conditions in order to properly level up to level 1 and gain the ability to level up further by killing people. I confused this to mean that BORK could potentially level up as a provisional member last chapter review, but that's not the case, and it does make more sense for the ability to work in this way. Morena goes on to explain that as the admin, she can monitor her points, location, and status, meaning that like any good app, Contagion comes along with a terms of service that has you effectively signing away any and all rights to privacy. Contagion will cease only if 1. The game is cleared, either referring to the user reaching level 100 and becoming a potential admin themselves, or when they've successfully attained their final goal for human extermination. One is obviously more realistic than the other. 2. The phone, i.e. the user, dies. 3. The admin, i.e. Morena, ceases to exist. Which is interesting phrasing that may hint to the ability becoming even more powerful following Morena's death. While Morena does say that it can't be uninstalled, I'm pretty sure that a sufficiently powerful Nen Exorcist could cleanse it. She goes on to explain to BORK that she's free to do as she wishes, but threatens her that she is disposable. While pretty much anything is technically allowed, from betrayal to infighting, that only goes until Morena decides to put her foot down. And since BORK can't know where that line is and further can't hide from her, it seems Morena's operating on the principle of fuck around and find out. There's also the possibility that Morena could remotely shut BORK down. That's never been explicitly stated, but at this point I don't trust Morena to explain jack. BORK decides to risk crossing this unknowable line by returning to her allies, determined to weather this storm and come out the other end. She asks Morena how to leave the hideout and inquires about a few more things relating to her newfound murder posse before dipping out. A quick note before we finish up. Depending on what she meant by it, BORK has yet to make true on her promise to use Morena's vows and limitations against her. While it's possible that she just meant she was going to cheat while Morena couldn't, she said so after she had already marked the cards and had realized Morena was taking care to answer her questions during the QA round truthfully. While very unlikely, it's at least possible that BORK's backup plan was to have Morena inadvertently promise during the QA round to leave her alone if BORK successfully leaves the hideout. Or she may have something else up her sleeve. We'll see. And that's the first half of chapter 410 done. Expect part 2 to be out in the coming few days. The hiatus has been announced, meaning that after part 2 I'm done with weekly chapter reviews for now. Meaning I'll be back to my usual content after a short break. But more on that next video. As always, thank you very much for watching. Your feedback is always appreciated. Subscribe if you like more content like this. I'd like to thank Kamaswami for going the extra mile in supporting the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.